This is an insane report. An NBA insider just dropped a bombshell. Former Knick Donte DiVincenzo could return to New York in the future. But if that happens, it's going to happen via trade. We're going to break down all of these latest reports today. If you're enjoying the content, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button and have notifications on as well too. If you want to support the channel, the easiest way to do that is to hit that subscribe button. And now, let's get started. The Knicks could trade for Donte DiVincenzo. You can ask nearly any Knicks fan on this planet if they want Donte DiVincenzo to return to New York. And I would venture that a large majority would answer yes to that question. Knicks fans still remember the trade that sent Donte DiVincenzo and Julius Randle to the Minnesota Timberwolves. In exchange, the Knicks got Karl Anthony Towns. Now, obviously, Cat is having a phenomenal season. So this is no knock to Karl Anthony Towns. But Donte DiVincenzo was always supposed to be part of the plans. Once he was traded, we all lost hope that he would ever be returning to New York. However, according to an NBA insider, he stated that New York could potentially trade for DiVincenzo. Now, before we get to that report, let's first talk about how we got here. This all started with one commercial from the Knicks about March Madness, and it featured the Villanova guys and Donte DiVincenzo himself. And in that commercial, they stated, well, really, Donte DiVincenzo stated, "I wish we could play basketball together forever." That's exactly what sparked this entire conversation, potentially about Donte DiVincenzo returning to New York. But again, that was just a commercial. It just gave Knicks fans hope. What took it to the next level was NBA insider Tim Bontemps and his following report about Donte DiVincenzo potentially returning to New York. Recently, I was a guest on Ian Begley's show, The Putback. And on that show, he had NBA insider Tim Bontemps on. If you haven't caught that full episode yet or watched the live, please go ahead and do so. Not only am I part of that show, but we discuss so many different Knicks topics. You definitely don't want to miss any of the information in that episode. So please go check it out if you haven't watched it already. But getting back to the report here, during that show, NBA insider Tim Bontemps gave us the following information on if the Knicks could trade for Donte DiVincenzo at some point in time in the future. Ian Begley asked him the following question. The Knicks at some point trading for DiVincenzo. I want to make something clear here. He says trading for DiVincenzo. I thought that was interesting. Not free agency, not contract expiring, trade. That means that Ian Begley, an NBA insider, is stating here that the only way for the Knicks to reacquire DiVincenzo is by trading for him. Just keep that in mind. Let's continue here. Begley states again, Knicks at some point trading for DiVincenzo. Ian Begley doesn't see that transaction happening, but he asked him Bontemps his thoughts on this situation. And Bontemps had the following response. According to him, yeah, I mean, it could happen at some point in time in the future. It's not like these guys are 35. So I could see Donte DiVincenzo coming back at some point down the road. But the Knicks gave him up in a deal because, in part, the Minnesota Timberwolves valued him, his skill set, and he's on a great contract. I would say it's unlikely. Even though Bontemps is saying it's unlikely, he did start off his response by saying it could happen at some point in time in the future. And the main reason he's saying that is because he knows. He knows that Donte DiVincenzo never wanted to leave this team. He knows the Knicks never wanted to trade Donte DiVincenzo. And he knows that if New York was in a position to get him back on this team, to trade for him and make sure he was part of this bench unit moving forward, the Knicks would absolutely pull the trigger and make that move because they never wanted to part with Donte DiVincenzo. All the reports had mentioned that. Even DiVincenzo himself stated he signed a long-term contract with the Knicks with the idea of staying with New York for a long period of time. He even mentioned, you don't sign a contract like that and think to yourself, yeah, I want to be traded the next year. That doesn't go into anybody's thinking. Unfortunately, if the Knicks wanted to get Karl Anthony Towns, the only way that trade was going to happen is if Donte DiVincenzo was involved. So unfortunately, New York had to pull the trigger and they had to execute that trade. But just because he's gone now doesn't mean he won't return in the future. It doesn't sound like he's going to come back immediately, though. And that's honestly to be expected because the Timberwolves have been playing extremely well over their last 13 to 14 games. They've been really hot playing together, and Donte DiVincenzo has been a huge part of that. He has been knocking down shots. He has been playmaking for that team, and he has looked very good in doing it. I don't know where the Timberwolves are going to end up this year, where they're going to be, and if they're even going to make noise come the postseason. But what I do know is Donte DiVincenzo coming back to New York was never going to happen this year. And in my opinion, probably won't happen next year either. However, if we're coming down to the final year of his contract or the second to final year of his contract, during that time, I think anything is possible and everyone would be available. And at that point, I can see the Knicks entertaining a trade trying to get Donte DiVincenzo back to this roster. Because we have to mention, Ian Begley did state it's not going to happen via free agency. If the Knicks get Donte DiVincenzo back, they're going to get him back via trade. NBA insider Tim Bontemps also believes that DiVincenzo could return to New York. Obviously, that's because DiVincenzo wants to come back to the Knicks. The Knicks want him back here. And also, he's young enough that the Knicks can trade for him again and get him back part of this team, either part of the bench or whatever role they want him to play. And I can't deny it. I can't lie. Looking at the Knicks bench right now, we could use a player like Donte DiVincenzo, somebody who can knock down a three, play some defense, stay with their man, has chemistry with the starting unit, and can develop chemistry with the bench unit. Donte DiVincenzo would check all of those boxes. And after seeing that March Madness commercial, after seeing this still image from that commercial, seeing how happy they were, what could have been with all of these guys being part of the same team, obviously, it pulls to my heartstrings. It probably pulls to your heartstrings. You probably want to see Donte DiVincenzo as bad as I want to see him back with this Knicks team. I know that's what a lot of Knicks fans want, and maybe in the future, we'll get there. Clearly, Tim Bontemps believes DiVincenzo will be returning to the Knicks at some point in time down the road. So the question isn't if he's going to return, it's when he's going to return. And in my opinion, the when happens during his final year of his contract, because at that time, the Knicks are going to be looking for an upgrade on their roster. They're going to be looking around the league, and they're going to have DiVincenzo at the top of their list. Number one, because they want DiVincenzo. They never wanted to trade him, but also it's likely the captain and Jalen Brunson will be telling Knicks management he's available. He's out there. Go out and get him back on this team. Again, the fans love him. New York City loves him. He loves the city. He loves playing here. His friends are here. He loves the fact that he could have played with his friends if he stayed on this team, and he never wanted to leave in the first place. New York never wanted to trade him in the first place. They were forced to, and they made the move they needed to make. But it doesn't mean that DiVincenzo's time in New York is over forever. If anything, at this point, it's on pause. Right now, he's with the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's doing a great job, and he's killing it over there. Great for him. Continue to ball out and do what you need to do. But sooner or later, that contract will be coming up. It will begin to expire. And on that final year, a lot of teams will be going out trying to convince DiVincenzo to join their roster. And one of those teams, clearly, obviously, if it wasn't as obvious before, hopefully it's obvious now, the Knicks will be at the top of the list of the teams trying to get Donte DiVincenzo back on their roster. And clearly, DiVincenzo will have some interest. And if they both want that to happen, that trade will happen and DiVincenzo will be part of this team again. Unfortunately, that won't happen right away. Knicks fans are going to have to be patient and wait for Donte DiVincenzo to return to New York. It's not going to happen this year. Likely not going to happen next year either. But in the future, at some point in time, DiVincenzo will return and he will be a New York Knick again. He will be playing in the Garden again. He will call New York his home once again. I fully believe it. Not only because of that commercial, not only because of that report, but also I believe this ever since the Knicks traded him away and he made comments about never wanting to leave New York. I think as soon as he can come back and he can return, he'll take the opportunity and he'll jump at it and try to come back to this team because playing with New York was always the goal for him. And honestly, I don't think that's changed. But what about you guys? What do you think about NBA insider Tim Bontemps stating that the Knicks could trade for Donte DiVincenzo at some point in time in the future? He could see it happening. Let me know how you feel about that in the comment section below, guys, because honestly, I would love to hear from you. But that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, go ahead and smash that like button, leave a comment below. And of course, guys, please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Knicks fans, take care of yourself, your families, and each other. Peace and love.